Hello everyone. Today's session we'll be talking about the algebraic term, degree of a term, and coefficients. First thing is, what is an algebraic term? Well, an algebraic term is basically, think of it as part of an algebraic expression, which by taking the big expression and dividing it into smaller parts, that would be called an algebraic term. So let me give you an example. We can have an equation like 2x squared plus 5. The 2x squared plus 5 is known as an expression. And each of these small parts that are separated by the addition sign are known as terms or algebraic terms. Therefore, the expression would be the whole two terms together, and each single of them would be called the term. The degree of a term, here we go, the degree of a term is basically the sum of all the exponents in an expression. So in the previous case we had 2x squared plus 5. For 2x squared plus 5, we can see that we have a variable here, x, with the exponent of 2. This is our exponent here. And with the 5 is known as a constant because there is no variable beside it. And given that there is no variable beside the 5, we can actually say that this does not have any exponent. So no exponent. Because there is no variable. Therefore, there is no exponent. Therefore, in this expression here, the degree of the term would only be 2. Alternatively, in another expression like 2x squared plus 5x plus 5, here we can see that we have a variable here and also another variable here. Our first variable has an exponent of 2, whereas our next variable has an exponent of 1. And that's why it's not written there, because it's assumed to be 1 all the time. Therefore, here we have 2 and 1 as our exponents, and when you add these together, you can see that 2 plus 1 equals to 3. Therefore, in the second part, our exponent would be, the degree of our exponent would be 3. And finally, let's talk about a coefficient. Coefficient. So a coefficient is basically a number that's in front of a variable. So let me give you an example. 2x squared, for example. The 2 here is the number that's in front of the variable, and therefore the 2 is known as a coefficient. In another case, we can have x squared, and you're probably wondering why there is no number in front of the x squared. Well, there is actually a number there. It's just not written there. It's always assumed to be a 1, and therefore in this case the 1 is the coefficient. We can also have other coefficients like 3x squared plus 5x plus 4. In this case, we actually have 1, 2. We have 2 coefficients. This 4 is not considered a coefficient. Why is it not considered a coefficient? Because there is no variable in front of the 4. This 4 is actually known as a constant. Therefore, to review the whole things we learned in this session, we talked about the algebraic term, which is the partial parts of an expression, and they are separated by either a plus sign or a minus sign. We talked about the degree of a term. The degree of a term is the sum of all the exponents in the variables. And finally, we talked about coefficients, and the coefficient is the number that is in front of the variable. If there is no variable and it's just a number by itself, like this case, the 4, this is known as a constant. Thank you for listening.